Wouldn't it be great if you could ask your data anything at any time? Like, how are sales this quarter? How's the new marketing campaign performing? What does the overall health of the company look like? And actually get answers right away with charts and graphics and actionable information. You can with Domo's AI and data products platform. Domo lets you channel AI and data quickly, securely, and innovatively to deliver measurable insights wherever and whenever you need them. Anyone on your team can use Domo to easily prepare, analyze, visualize, automate, and distribute data, all amplified by AI. Domo goes beyond productivity. It's designed to transform your processes, helping you make smarter and faster decisions and drive real growth. All powered by Domo's trust, flexibility, and years of expertise in data and AI innovation. The world's best companies rely on Domo to make smarter decisions. See how Domo can help transform yours. Learn more at ai.domo.com. That's ai.domo.com.
The Agile Brand.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Agile Brand, where we discuss marketing technology and customer experience trends, insights, and ideas with enterprise and technology platform leaders. We focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make brands successful, scalable, customer-focused, and sustainable. This is what makes an Agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. The Agile Brand Podcast is brought to you by TechSystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that my latest book, Priority is Action: 7 Principles for Better Strategies, Decisions, and Outcomes, is now available. In it, I give ideas and insights for leaders and teams that need to make meaningful progress on their priorities. After all, our priorities are what we do, not what we say we'd like to do. You can find Priority is Action on Amazon or learn more on my website, gregkihlstrom.com. Now let's get on to the show. Today, we're diving deep into the role of brands in today's socially conscious market. We'll explore the intricacies of engaging with social issues, navigating the challenges of fragmented audiences, and the importance of a brand crafting and owning its narrative. These discussions are crucial for understanding how major brands approach their public affairs strategy in a world where every action and policy is scrutinized. To help me discuss these topics, I'd like to welcome Taylor Bennett, Global Head of Public Affairs at DoorDash. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me. Excited to dive in.
Yeah. Looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we get started, though, with you sharing a little bit about your role at DoorDash and, just how it intersects with these issues that I mentioned.
Yeah, so I am the global head of public affairs here, heading into 4 years, and my world really revolves around social and policy issue engagement. That starts with telling the DoorDash story and really demonstrating the positive impact we're having in communities to all sides of our marketplace, including policymakers and regulators. So really responsible for elevating our social impact work, all the good things we're doing in communities, showcasing leadership around trust and safety issues. And the other side of that, crisis and issues management. So the reactive and the rapid response work we'll talk through, I'm sure. And as I mentioned, policymakers, regulators, really ensuring they hear from us and recognize the role we play in society, the importance that DoorDash offers to consumers, to merchants, et cetera. And, I've been doing this for over 20 years now. And so I've learned a lot about elevating brands and telling stories. And along the way, avoiding various social issues or policy issues, and at the same time, leveraging others to really advance a narrative. So cover quite a lot here, and a lot of it is hypersensitive and can offer a lot of pitfalls and risk, but many others real opportunities to tell a positive story and grow a brand.
Great. Well, yeah, let's dive in here, and let's get started by talking about engaging audiences on social issues. So, when social issues are more prominent than ever, brands can play a significant role in these conversations. So, let's discuss a little bit how brands can identify the right moments to engage their audiences on these matters. And the considerations also involved in deciding when it may not be the best time to get involved. So from your perspective, then, how should brands assess the right time to engage with their audiences on social issues? And, what factors should they consider to avoid a misstep?
Yeah, it's a great question, and knowing when to engage is just as important as knowing when not to engage. The recent, I think, interesting stat, the recent Roe versus Wade decision poll at that time found that less than 10% of companies actually publicly commented on it, which I think speaks volumes. It shows that there's real risk and there are issues that companies just should avoid and want to avoid, and it was okay to avoid. And I think that is something that has really shifted over time. This is an evolving topic. Policy and social issues is something that, historically, prudent strategy was to stay out of the fray, not comment, not get into these things as a company. But there have been cultural, contextual shifts. Corporate engagement has changed over the years, and I think now you're seeing, silence is speech. Inaction carries just as much risk as taking a stance. And so it's more important than ever for companies to think about and understand when and how they engage in these issues. And you hear poll after poll, especially on, nowadays ESG or DEI, where consumers have reactions to these issues where they don't want to hear from companies anymore. They don't think that CEOs should have public perspectives on some of these things. And so, you oftentimes get mixed signals, but you also want to be able to show value as a company, really speak to your employees, and be part of the conversation where it's relevant. And so not getting caught on your back foot, not scrambling to react or to shape up the perspectives can be really important. Three questions that I always ask myself and we here at DoorDash is, does the issue threaten your business? Does it link back to your values? If you're a mission-driven company, does it support that mission? And then lastly, can you actually make an impact for your business? Does your operations, does your footprint, does it allow you to actually participate in that conversation, participate in advocacy and be helpful? And so, asking those questions can really help steer a company in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely hear you with there's kind of competing signals of, the silence and, silence speaking volumes sometimes as well as it's almost paradoxical, like the expectation
Mhm.
that CEOs have to have a perspective. It's a lot of times most of the time those two things can't coexist. So, in your experience,
Right.
where are there clear indicators? I mean, it sounds a bit muddy, but are there clear indicators or processes, that kind of help determine when a brand should or shouldn't engage in some of these discussions?
Yeah, we at DoorDash we have something called the DoorDash Compass, and it was really built on our mission to help local communities. And it's a framework. It's a framework that allows us to figure out how and when we want to engage in social or policy issues. And it's crafted, and there's a visual. I wish I could share it with you, but it's literally a compass, and on that compass, it's promote progress and fairness, and then another side of it is to protect against bias or exclusion of our audiences. And so, it is a very kind of formal process and structure that we lean on to help us determine that. And I would encourage other brands to sort of create their own compass. Think about what is it that is important in their workplace culture. What is it that they might want to take a proactive position around? And that said, policy issues are very different than social issues, where as a business, you may want to advocate for policy that helps your business thrive or helps your company grow, whereas social issues may be more aligned around your employee base or your corporate values. And so really understanding what those are, where they align, and how you want to prioritize is going to be key. And so we take a very thoughtful and systematic approach to those policy issues and to the social issues, and it's consistent, making sure that we are leaning on that compass, we're having internal conversations, and really identifying which moments in time we want to react to. And then on the broader spectrum, how we really want to be consistent with some of those issues over time, so we start to build a brand around it.
Yeah, yeah. And to add even more complexity onto this. Let's talk about not everybody agrees with every point on every issue. So we've got fragmented audiences on top of the expectation of
Yeah.
either a response or none, as it were. So large brands such as DoorDash, often face the challenge of addressing these diverse audience segments. So let's talk a little bit about strategies for managing these fragmented audiences. So, how can a brand like DoorDash navigate these types of complexities as well, when fragmented audiences have differing views on, these different social or policy issues?
Sure. This is particularly relevant for DoorDash. We are a three-sided marketplace. So we have consumers, we have merchants, and we have the delivery workers, the dashers we call them. And dashers care about making money. They care about the platform experience. Customers want affordability and selection. Merchants want to grow their business. They want to be able to reach more consumers. And then you have the general public who may not care about any of these things and have very different priorities. And so navigating each one of those audiences is really critically important when it comes to the issues that you're going to advocate for, which social issues you're going to engage around. And I would say for social issues in particular, again, coming back to your corporate values, coming back to your mission, what's important for you as a company, what's important to your employee base. And then on policy issues, you can advocate for certain things that may be good for one audience, but not for another, if it's helpful and it provides benefit, but being mindful that there are negative implications oftentimes or trade-offs that you have to consider when it does come to policy issue advocacy. For instance, alcohol delivery on the platform. It's good for merchants. It allows them to increase basket size and make more money by selling more to consumers. It helps dashers make more money because those are traditionally higher value orders. But then you might have an issue like worker classification, for instance, where flexibility is really important for workers. So knowing what those issues are and really getting a clear understanding of the impact, the implications of those issues is going to be important when you think about your fragmented audience. And so, leaning into the issue areas where you align and being proactive can be really helpful when you want to reach your audiences and be able to tell a story that is relevant to them and that builds goodwill with those audiences.
Wouldn't it be great if you could ask your data anything at any time? Like, how are sales this quarter? How's the new marketing campaign performing? What does the overall health of the company look like? And actually get answers right away with charts and graphics and actionable information. You can with Domo's AI and data products platform. Domo lets you channel AI and data quickly, securely, and innovatively to deliver measurable insights wherever and whenever you need them. Anyone on your team can use Domo to easily prepare, analyze, visualize, automate, and distribute data, all amplified by AI. Domo goes beyond productivity. It's designed to transform your processes, helping you make smarter and faster decisions and drive real growth, all powered by Domo's trust, flexibility, and years of expertise in data and AI innovation. The world's best companies rely on Domo to make smarter decisions. See how Domo can help transform yours. Learn more at ai.domo.com. That's ai.domo.com.
As we're talking about complex issues and fragmented audiences and even the best plans and clearest communication strategies, all that, sometimes things don't go as planned, right? Or, whatever the specifics may be. So, what would you recommend that a brand do to address situations and mitigate any negative impacts when, policy doesn't go as planned?
Yeah, it's a great question, a tough question for
of course.
experiencing it. And luckily we've got the benefit of history to help teach us and guide us. If you'll remember Nike sponsorship years back, I think 2018, Colin Kaepernick, and the resulting controversy of all of that, I think they saw something like a 3% dip in stock, something, $4 billion in lost value, I believe it was at the time. And so there's real business and reputational impact that comes with such crises, if you will. Making the wrong call, engaging in the wrong issue, it can really have a tremendous impact on the business and on your reputation. But months later, Nike was able to rebound. Their stock came back, and they were actually seen as a really admirable company who took a stance on an issue that was important to them, and it was relevant, it aligned, and it was built back to their mission and values. And so they were able to come back from that even stronger. Fast forward, 5 some years later, in the Bud Light controversy with their sponsorship had a very different outcome. And I think you see brands really taking pause and noticing that. And so, what were the differences there, and how could they or other brands think about it more deeply and think about some of those missteps and some of the the misaligned engagement. And so, should you find yourself in that position, I think it's always important to monitor, to really understand the media landscape, the social landscape. What was the impact? What was the volume? Are you continuing to see backlash, or with time will you move through the cycle and you'll be one and done? And we are all so attention span limited that oftentimes these things can come and go very quickly, but some will stick. And so making sure you're monitoring and analyzing, really having an understanding of the moment and whether you should engage or let it pass. And when you do, more often than not, engaging is going to be the right way to go. Being transparent, acknowledging the mistake, acknowledging the issue, acknowledging the misstep, and communicating about it honestly and sincerely, being genuine, taking responsibility if something didn't go as planned. Don't get cute. Don't try to deflect. I think it's much more appreciated to be transparent about something and to own it than try to pass the blame or get through it in a way that is a little bit less sincere. So, being able to monitor and then react in real time is going to be key for brands who find themselves in that position.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue to the last thing I wanted to explore here, which is really, how brands can own their narrative. I mean, again, nothing is ever 100% smooth as much as we plan for it, but brands do have the opportunity to define, where they stand when they contribute and
Mhm.
things like that. And so, I wanted to talk a little bit more about, establishing perspectives and being proactive and really again owning that
Mhm.
narrative. So how do you look at this? How important is this, being proactive, defining stances on social issues, and how do you look at strategies that can be employed to ensure that the brand narrative is really owned effectively?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting today. As we talked about the sort of evolution of these issues and how companies engage. It's important for brands to know what their positions are on these issues and know what their stances are, and that's the first step. What do they care about? What does matter to their employees that aligns back to their mission, et cetera. That's the first step, and then really understanding how do you want to communicate about that? What are the channels? What are the forums? Companies benefit when consumers know who you are and what you stand for. What I think was Edelman's trust barometer. Consumers trust brands more than government these days. And so being able to build a brand, have a narrative that really aligns with their values is important. And so I think it is important to own your story, to be able to articulate it often and consistently. Public affairs teams like mine and comms teams can help with this. We have a social impact comms function that I oversee and a policy comms function. And so we're thinking about these issues deeply every day, and we're elevating the work we're doing in communities, whether it's around Project Dash, our food access work, whether it's around policy issues like alcohol delivery or maintaining flexibility for workers. And so we're constantly mining internally for stories and data to help bring those to life and then guide those to the right audiences. And again, with this fragmented audience base we have, sometimes it's really important that we get in front of those policymakers or regulators. Other times it's important that consumers know we're an affordable platform. And so leveraging the tools you do have and using your own channels. I think oftentimes we try to bank shot often earned story or get something placed via media, which is important and it carries weight. But we have so many different tools at our disposal, whether it's social or paid advertising, our blogs, et cetera, LinkedIn. And so how do we deploy those more to own our story more and get it in front of the right audiences at the right times where they are? And so the narrative development is really critically important. It's that sort of step two after you figure out what are the issues, social or policy or otherwise, that are important to your brand and important to your employees. And then, with all good comms work, having others help tell the story is going to be important. So, who are the third parties, who are the surrogates out there that can echo what you're saying and help bring it to life through their channels, but also add some credibility and say, yeah, this brand does stand for it, and we believe and trust them.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I think you're definitely a good person to ask this next question too. You mentioned DoorDash being a three-sided marketplace that's a little more complex than other brands may be dealing with as well. But what advice would you have on doing just what you've been describing?
Mhm,
Developing a clear perspective, whatever that perspective is, but
mhm.
developing the clear perspective and communicating it, because this is not just communicated externally, but it's also internally, right? So,
Exactly.
what advice would you have there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. As I mentioned earlier, create your own brand compass, and whether it's a compass or guidelines or principles, but really convening internal stakeholders and asking the question, what do we believe in as a company? What are our values? And then what are some of the things that we care about? What are the issues that we want to get behind and advocate for? Immigrant reform or gun control or food access and insecurity, the things that matter to you, and really having honest conversations about it. And brands should give themselves permission to evolve. As we talked about, this is a very fluid topic, and context of cultural and political climates shift. And so being flexible with your positions, knowing that society's expectations may change in a year or two, and you should as well as a brand. That doesn't mean you need to keep flip flopping on the issues, but being able to evolve as the priorities shift, as the acuteness of it changes. Really important to add some flexibility there. And then, when it's communicating those positions, again, being authentic about it, communicating in a voice that is going to resonate with your audiences, with those you are trying to reach. And, again, if it's workers, it's a very different voice than if it's merchants who, really care about growing their business and thriving on our platform, versus regulators who, can have a real impact on our business and the longevity of our own business. And so finding the right channels, finding the right voice to do so. And then you were absolutely right about the internal communication. The employees are those who matter most in this case, and making sure that our positions align with our employee base, and that we are articulating why we've done something, or why we have not engaged on an issue, is really critically important. And then, aside from being in a position of crisis where you are cleaning up a mess, you shouldn't be afraid to really be bold and creative about how you're telling that story. There could be interesting ways to show leadership, to engage audiences in thoughtful ways, that help you stand out. And if you're really passionate about a particular issue, if you're a leader on something, show leadership on it and do it in a way that could really resonate with audiences, and, move the needle and be really, really impactful. So the narrative development, the policy and issue, social issue alignment, all steps to get to that outward and internal communication.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, Taylor, thanks so much for joining. I've got one last question before we wrap up here, and probably building on what you've shared already. But things continue to evolve, and consumers as well as others' relationship to brands and what they're kind of looking for from brands continues to evolve. But how do you envision this, whether it's a continuum, whether you see some trends popping up as well, how do you envision the future of brand engagement with social issues? And what would you recommend that companies keep in mind to maintain this, the image that they want
Yeah.
in the months ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, just thanks for having me. This has been great. Really enjoyed the conversation, and excited
Yeah.
to dig in further again with you. But no, to answer your question, I think we're going to see, cultural shifts will continue to change, and social issues will evolve, as I was just mentioning. And so being nimble and fluid and being able to evolve alongside is important. But I think we're going to see a lot more investment in social impact, and companies are recognizing and have recognized. But I think we'll continue to see this trend where, the storytelling around community impact, building programs that are important to these issues, that help advocate around policy, and giving brands momentum and opportunities to tell those stories in new ways, is something I think we're going to continue to see, just more energy and excitement around that social impact storytelling. and then CSR efforts, as I mentioned, can sometimes be a lightning rod or something that brands steer clear of. But I think there's going to be a greater recognition that companies need to communicate about these efforts more effectively, not necessarily more or more outwardly, but more effectively, being able to engage diverse stakeholders, maintain transparency in how they're talking about their brands is really important. Consumers demand it. We have more and more fragmented audiences who get their news and information from new and different places every day. And so the expectation is that we will leverage those channels and we will be present. And so the effectiveness in how we communicate, I think, will increase. Axios just saw this, I think it was yesterday or today, shards of glass, they called it, and sort of this fragmented audience where, there's a dozen different places that they've identified and sort of who these audiences are and who these consumers are. But, where they get the news, whether it's TikTok or, cable and newspapers or, their own sort of finite worlds within their industry outlets. But it's this world we live in now where it's going to be incredibly important to identify those audiences and leverage the channels that we have. And so, just continuing fragmentation, continuing limited attention spans, and the expectations that businesses will engage in each and every one of those moments and really be effective at communicating. And, no small job for communicators, but I think very, very exciting future for us all.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and thank you so much for sharing all these insights. Again, I'd like to thank Taylor Bennett, Global Head of Public Affairs at DoorDash, for joining the show. You can learn more about Taylor and DoorDash by following the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to The Agile Brand, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkillstrom.com. That's GregKilstrom.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile Brand guides, covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Killstrom on Amazon. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.
The Agile Brand.